This is the I Don't Want a Divorce podcast with Dr. David E. Clarke. I'm going to talk about the high cost of divorce, something our culture never talks about because culture could care less about divorce. God does care. Not getting divorced and building an intimate, happy marriage is why I wrote Married But Lonely, and it's why I'm doing this series of podcasts. It's also why I wrote my other books on marital crisis, I Don't Want a Divorce, I Don't Love You Anymore, Enough is Enough, How to Leave an Abusive Relationship, and My Spouse Wants Out, how to draw back a spouse that wants a divorce. My wonderful blonde Sandy and I have been fighting divorce for over 30 years. It's what we do. It's our ministry. Our website, davideclarkephd.com, Clarke with an E, has all the resources you need to not get divorced, to save your marriage, and to build a great marriage. I've been at this long enough. You give me the scenario, I've got a plan of action for you. You might also consider doing a phone advice session with me. I do more and more of these. I'm in a crisis, Dr. Clarke. My spouse has left. My spouse has had an affair. My spouse has spent all of our money. My spouse is emotionally abusive, whatever the scenario. Or we're just boring each other to death. We're thinking of divorce because we're so unhappy. We have a blended family, whatever the issue. After 45 minutes, I'll get the background. I'll give you a clear plan of action. Let's talk about the high cost of divorce. And I'm going to begin with this statement, and it is a true statement. It's one that our culture does not agree with, but they're wrong and I'm right. There is no such thing as an amicable divorce. You ever hear these words from someone? Our divorce was amicable. Don't you just love it when someone says that to you? This person goes on to tell you that the divorce process was wonderful and hassle-free. Not necessarily fun, but it really went well. Everything was divided up in a reasonable and adult fashion. The money situation worked out well, and the children are doing fine. The clincher, delivered with a sweet smile, is this line. You know what? My ex-spouse and I get along beautifully, and we have an effective co-parenting relationship. In response to this person's description of a pain-free divorce, you're supposed to say things like this. And they're looking at you, expecting you to say this. Oh, that's great. I'm so happy for you. That's the way everyone should handle divorce. It's best for the kids if you can divorce this way. Let me give you my response to the amicable divorce myth. When a client gives me this amicable divorce speech in my therapy office, I don't respond with the above expected platitudes. I give two responses, neither of which are well received, but they are the truth. I've had people walk out of my office when I tell them this. You know what? Go ahead. Because at least you've heard the truth. First, I say, help me understand this. If your divorce was so easy and you get along so well with your ex-spouse, why did you get divorced in the first place? It doesn't make any sense to me. Second, I say, I appreciate the effort, but I'm not buying it. You are in denial. You don't want to face the terrible pain of divorce. So if it was amicable, you don't have to. I need to hear the real truth about your divorce so I can help you and your children heal and rebuild. What they're doing is denial, absolute and utter denial. The amicable divorce is the invention of a secular society, a godless society that ascribes no value to marriage. If marriage has no value or meaning, then divorce has no value or meaning. Divorce ought to be no big deal. They're desperate to have divorce be no big deal. These things just happen. Baloney. Society wants spouses to feel no guilt or pain or any emotion about getting divorced. If the two spouses can remain calm and work out a reasonable settlement, everything's fine. Everything's good. No one has to be upset. It's like getting rid of a car that doesn't work anymore, or a refrigerator, or a couch. Just get rid of it and move on. The truth about divorce isn't pretty. I know because I work with it all the time and fight it. As a clinical psychologist who has worked with couples for over 30 years, I know better. No one, listen to me, no one has ever had an amicable divorce. No one. I don't care what they say. Plenty of spouses say they have, but they are lying to themselves, lying to their friends, lying to their children. You know what divorce is? It's the death of a family. There is nothing good or nice or reasonable or amicable about it. Divorce is a deeply traumatic, incredibly painful, heartbreaking, soul-wounding, life-changing experience. That's the truth. Divorce kills a sacred relationship. Genesis 2:24 talks about the one flesh relationship. And what that verse means is God created marriage. You can read the verse. In fact, I'll read it right now. Look it up in my Bible, and I'm going to read it to you because it's powerful. Genesis 2:24, the first mention of male-female relationship in the Bible. God says, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh." You know who created marriage? God created marriage. That makes it sacred. We look at Ephesians 5:25. Listen to this, and I hope you're sitting down. Husbands, Paul says, love your wives. How? Just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Wow. Marriage is the very picture of Christ's relationship with the church. Nothing could be more sacred. It is to be unbreakable. Malachi 2:16. I'll often read this to seminar audiences, and you can hear a pin drop when I do. I hate divorce, says the Lord God of Israel in Malachi 2:16. Whoa. You better have a solid 18-karat gold reason for divorce, biblical reason, and most people don't. 95% of people don't, but they don't care because they want what they want. Divorce kills a dream. The dream is to be together, to be in love forever, and so when you lose that dream, it's a deep wound. The carnage is unbelievable. Emotional carnage and destruction and pain. Depression, anxiety, stress, the recovery from divorce is real. It's hard. Society never talks about that because they don't want to go there. It's like no big deal. It's like changing a coat. Baloney. Financially, I've seen carnage. Maybe so have you. Maybe you've experienced it. Dividing up assets means there's less to go around unless you're like super wealthy. You know what? Half of what you have is serious. Very often, one spouse, usually the woman, has to get a job, has to get a new job, has to get retrained, and it's a hand-to-mouth existence. All of a sudden, you have to pay for daycare, and daycare is expensive with small kids, big time expensive. Or your kids were going to a private Christian school. You love that school, was perfect for them. Or a charter school, a private school, Catholic school. And all of a sudden, because you're divorced, you can't afford it. It dramatically changes your kids' lives. Physically, all kinds of effects. Stress and trauma hurts the body. Wherever you're weak in your body, that's where the pain will go. And it can really do harm. Also, it hurts the children. Don't ever say to me, or you're going to get it back big time, that divorce doesn't hurt children. It doesn't harm the kids. Baloney. That's a lie. From the pit of hell, frankly. Their self-esteem craters. Their confidence is destroyed. Their security wiped out. It is a traumatic experience for kids of all ages. When my Sandy's parents got divorced, after 44 years of marriage, she was an adult woman, a grown woman. It hurt her, and it hurt her and her brother deeply, and it hurt our kids. Okay, life went on, and things worked out, but you know what? There's an impact. I don't care how old you are. It hurts. It's hard enough being a kid and growing up these days. Now they have to deal with the breakup of their family. Your children will be more likely to consider divorce because you got divorced. That's true. And unless they heal from the trauma of divorce, it will transfer to all their close opposite sex relationships. And frankly, yours too, if you don't heal. You will lose many friends after divorce, especially your couple friends, because it's not the same. People, well, I'm still your friend. You end up not being with them because you're a third wheel. People take sides. People feel awkward. It's very likely you'll lose your church. One spouse usually has to leave your church. Why? Because it's too awkward to be there when you're divorced. That's another serious loss. You also have to be a single parent now, at least for a while. It's brutally tough. Totally on your own. Dealing with your kids and all the changes and the lack of money. It's awful. It's not God's design. And now you have to date again and find a new spouse who you can trust. Man alive, that's hard. In fact, the percentage of second marriages that end in divorce is higher than first marriages. If you remarry, the blended family is very difficult. It can be done, but it's complicated and painful. This is the truth about divorce, and it's not pretty. Now, Now look, there are times when divorce cannot be avoided. And there are biblical reasons for divorce: ongoing unrepentant adultery, desertion by an unbelieving spouse, ongoing unrepentant serious emotional abuse. Maybe your spouse is divorcing you, and there's nothing you can do about that. Maybe your spouse is abusive and God has released you to get a divorce. These issues happen. But I'm telling you what God expects, even in those circumstances, is for you to do everything in your power to save your marriage. That's why I wrote the book, Married But Lonely. Short of divorce, you can say before God, I tried this approach. My husband, my wife did not respond, but I tried. It's important for the kids to know I did everything I could to save my marriage. It couldn't be done. That's why I wrote the book, I Don't Want a Divorce. That's why I wrote the book, I Don't Love You Anymore. That's why I wrote the book, Enough is Enough, How to Leave an Abusive Relationship. Even in that book, I don't mention divorce. I never recommend divorce. That's between you and God. But even when you leave an abusive spouse, you give that abusive spouse from a distance from safety and a distance, and you're protected and your life has moved on. Short of divorce, you give them a chance to change. They might or might not, but you give them a shot. It's why I wrote my latest book, My Spouse Wants Out. How to get angry, fight back, and save your marriage. The key is taking the right biblical approach to saving your marriage. I can help you with that. The books I just discussed, these are plans of action, specific step-by-step manuals. And as I said, I think earlier, I mentioned this in other podcasts, you and I can do a phone advice session, and I'll give you a specific strategy that fits your situation, and that will give you the best chance to save your marriage. I am not saying and teaching and writing what most of the Christian community supports. And as a matter of fact, they're wrong. They're wimpy. They don't follow the Bible. I do. That may seem harsh. It's just the truth. I can support my position. They can't. I also do marriage and individual intensives here in Tampa, Florida. You might want to consider those as well. I have a book. I guarantee you, I have a book that will fit your marital crisis, so that before God, you can say, I did everything I could. Before your children, everything I could. Before your friends, everything I could. Before your church, everything I could to save my marriage. And that's important. And it will help you in the aftermath, even if there is a divorce. So that's the high cost of divorce. Now, I'm not condemning anyone who has had a divorce. You might be thinking, well, Dave, I'm listening to this podcast and I've been divorced and it wasn't for biblical reasons maybe. You know what, God, if you confess, God forgives you totally. He'll wipe the slate clean. You're going to have to work through the issues and heal emotionally. Okay, I do that kind of work and I can help you with that. Or a local in-person counselor. But you're going to heal from that. In fact, my book, I'm Not Okay and Neither Are You, will help you with the personal healing from a divorce. So God will help you heal and recover. And what I'm saying is the marriage you're in right now, I don't care if it's number 2, number 3, number 4, number 1, God says, I want you to work on this marriage and save it and make it the best marriage you can have.